Hope you're all doing well. I do get excited about these kind of events because it is a bit more hands-on and slightly different from the ones we've done normally. If you've been to any of our events with the Kodiri guys, either in Peckham or we did one at Treatwell's offices in Holborn, what seems like 2 years ago or something like that. They do go down really, really well. So yeah, looking forward to it. It's a slight change to the format this evening. So unfortunately, I've got some bad news to start the event off with. The Perkbox family actually lost someone in their front-end engineering team today. So Richard isn't going to be able to join us, but all of our thoughts do go all of them events and time off, understandably. So we have had a few people step up last minute, which is great. So thankful to all of the Kodiri guys for getting involved. So rather than having Richard's talk this evening, we're going to be going straight into Ricardo, and he's going to give you a full overview of the paired programming exercise that he's going to be doing, as well as the technical challenges that you guys are going to be able to do in the background at the same time. So I did share the link earlier in the description, but if you do need to get on there now, it's kodiri.com/play, which is KODRIR.com/play. And yeah, Ricardo will talk you through all of the details and everything like that. If you don't fancy doing some actual technical coding games, then you can just sit and kick back and relax and enjoy the Kodiri guys all having a crack together. So it should make for some pretty interesting viewing. If you know who these guys are, it's one thing that's guaranteed is it'll be entertaining. So yeah, I'll leave it up to them. If you do have any questions, just shout out in the comments section, be as involved as possible. And this is really one of the ones to enjoy. So let's get started.
Nate, you're live.
Cool. So welcome everyone. My name is Ricardo. I'm the founder of Kodiri. So if it's the first time you came across Kodiri, just to give you an overview about what the platform is. So this is a non-profit online system where everyone can practice with their coding skills. So let me just give you an overview on the platform in case it's the first time you play with it. So once you join it, which is completely free, obviously. So things you can do, first of all, you can practice with your coding skills. So we have a range of languages, technologies, frameworks, libraries, blah, blah, blah. You'll find out many web-related technologies, but also we got things like Java or Python, for instance. This system is completely community-driven, so the community is helping us to build more and more training exercises. So let me just present you an example before we crack on with today's activity. So imagine that I want to test my HTML and CSS skills. So essentially, I can select the stack, and then we got multiple difficulty levels from the very, very, very basics to the some of the most challenging questions that we can hopefully think about. Then what else? Well, then we got a bunch of modules. So for instance, let's talk about colors. So if I select the colors module, what I'll get is a bunch of questions, 5 questions, to prove my ability to deal with colors in HTML and more precisely CSS. So we present a problem. So how the user interface should look like in different devices, like TV, laptop, mobile, whatever. And then because this is lower beginner, so this is for people with very, very little coding experience, if any. So we just need to choose the right answer, the right choice, which in this particular case, I mean, if we fail, if we think that in order to change the color of the text in CSS, we need to select the option yellow color, which is wrong, you'll find out that the code is not working. So we present you a problem. So we expected the code to be really yellow. In reality, it is white. So we're highlighting pixel by pixel the difference between the expected and the returning result. So once we figure out that the right answer is yellow without any quotation marks or anything like that, so then you get confetti time, which means that the solution is right. and then we can proceed with the next question. Yeah, so that's pretty much the way it works. Today, obviously, we're not going to talk about HTML and CSS, but just to give you an idea. On top of that, if you like the analytics and metrics and things like that, I mean, you'll find out many statistics about how many players are using it, where are the best players by country, by region, on all these sort of things, right? So what are we going to do today? Today, we're going to run a bunch of coding challenges. So once you join the platform, on the left-hand side, you'll find out a challenges option. And once you click on it, you are going to find two tracks. First of all, the beginner track, and then the intermediate. Yeah, the order is not relevant. So obviously, depending on your ability to work with React, you'll select one or the other, right? So on each difficulty level, beginner, we got 3 sub-levels. So for instance, on beginner, we got lower beginner, that's the easiest level. Then we got mid beginner, and finally we got upper beginner. Likewise, you get the same thing on the intermediate, right? Lower intermediate, mid intermediate, and eventually upper intermediate. So just feel free to select your level. Actually, I'll show you how to proceed. So once you select your level, for instance, upper beginner, as an example, you'll have to select a team. So I've set up 4 teams. And at the end of the challenge, we will present which team has the best score. Yeah? So the idea here is not to prove that you are the best developer. The idea is to prove that your team works better than others. Yeah? So it doesn't really matter which team you choose. And then once you select the team, you click on the Start Challenge. And finally, it's up to you to deal with 5 questions, 5 random questions related to that difficulty level. If by any chance you realize that the difficulty level was wrong, either because it's too complicated or because it's too easy, you can leave the test. You click here, and then you confirm that you want to leave, and you'll return to the home page where you can choose a new level. So that's the activity we are going to run today. You got 2 options. Option A, you play the challenge by yourself. You select a team and you play one or more multiple challenges. Option B is here in YouTube. I'm going to solve some of these challenges with the help of a bunch of collaborators from Kodiri that are here with me. So I haven't actually prepared the questions. So I think it's a good opportunity to do some, to play around with the code, to have a discussion about the different approaches, different techniques in order to satisfy the appetite of the platform. That's what I'm going to do in a second. Finally, if you like the platform, feel free to let us know. And if you want to collaborate with us, we'll be more than happy to spread the word with you. Cool. So the challenges are open, so you can join them right now. Once again, you go to the challenges view, and then you select any of the difficulty levels. So once again, I'm going to start with upper beginner. If I got time, I think I will have enough time. Eventually, I will jump to upper intermediate. By the way, you got 45 minutes. 45 minutes. We will complete the challenge around 7 p.m. And after the challenge, we will present the results on each category. All right, so let's just start with the upper beginner, and then we'll see what we got here on question number 1. So it's important, obviously, to really get an idea, a good feeling about what the question is about. If you've been working with React for a while, I'm sure you know some testing tools. In this particular use case scenario, so we are using Enzyme, which is provided by Airbnb. And thanks to Enzyme, we can test our components efficiently. So on question number 1, what we are expected to do, which is quite simple, is we're expected to create a new component in React with name text. So that component should have an input of type text. So we are going to offer some mechanism, some interaction mechanism to the user. So then the value, the content of that input should be my first input. Okay? As simple as that. And obviously, on top of that, we also want to have a placeholder, which is the text that gets displayed, when the field is empty. When you want to sign up in a platform, sometimes you get a grayed out text in the middle of inside of the box saying, please enter your email, please enter your password, whatever. So yeah, once again, I'm not gonna do that by myself. We've got some friends around, so I will keep asking them questions. They will ask me questions, and we'll try to make an entertaining session, of course. So what do we get first? So first of all, we need to build an input. So let me type input, type text, yeah, and then we need to set a value, which is, that's pretty simple. Everything is hard coded. We don't need to check any sort of mechanism to deal with data, to bind properties. Let's just type the data, my first input. Let's be careful with the case, because as you probably know, so JavaScript and so React, they are case sensitive. So if we fail dealing with capitals, small letters, stuff like that, we'll ruin it. And then eventually we need a placeholder. As you can probably see already, the line is going to get quite long. So something I'm going to do right now is to keep one attribute per line. And that will hopefully help a bit in order to keep all the relevant information on the screen. So the placeholder should be something like, this text is visible when input is blank, something like that. And then obviously we need to close the input tag. So I got a question for our collaborators today. What do you think, guys? Is that code right, wrong? Any issues?
I think that's right. I think.
Yeah, looks good to me.
Yeah.
Looks good. All right. So we test it and see if it passes.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's go for it.
We'll do it.
If we click on the test button, then we'll get the feeling about whether that's right or wrong. Cool. We got confetti time. And that's great. That's great. We don't have any warnings or anything like that. Guys, I got a question for you. Should we use single quotes or double quotes on the HTML or on the JSX attributes? What do you think?
Well, if
Double? Why double?
According to the Airbnb style guide, we should always use double quotes.
That's correct. That's correct. So you know that when coding, there are different style guides. The idea behind a style guide is try to normalize the different coding accents. Because if a developer is using single quotes, another developer is using double quotes, a developer likes to indent the code like that, another developer likes to indent the code like that, at the end of the day, it's very difficult to understand each other. Based on that, there are some standards. One of the most popular one is published by Airbnb, which is on GitHub, so you can find all the details. So according to the Airbnb style guide and many other style guides, not just the Airbnb one, it is recommended to use double quotes. If you want to know the reason, well, historically speaking, HTML has been using double quotes. So, the idea is to reuse whatever is there. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. All right, so yeah, that's pretty much it. And now I got a question, guys. Is there any way to improve this solution? Can you see any improvement point here?
Suppose you could replace the div with just an empty tag.
That's interesting. That's interesting. That's interesting. So Lauren is suggesting to just get rid of the div because it's a bit unnecessary. What do we need a div? Why do we need a parent div? I mean, is it something related to the test? Not really. The test is not opinionated about the structure of our component. So this, we can create what we call a fragment that will be replaced by nothing. So it will be just the input. Or in this particular case, I would like to suggest to just get rid of that empty tag. Yeah? I mean, what's the point of having an empty tag if at the end of the day, we just want to have a single div? As you know, there is a limitation with React. There is some sort of soft limitation where all the components must have a root element. So if you want to have multiple elements, then having a fragment may be convenient, or having return an array could be convenient. But in this particular case, we just want to return an input. So let's keep it simple. Yeah, the simpler, the better. All right, so let's test it, and if that's right, then we'll jump to the next question. All right, cool. So it works fine. So then let's just move it to question number 2. And what we got in question number 2? That's interesting. This is kind of similar. We again want to build an input text. However, the main difference is in this occasion, we don't want to hard code the value. We don't want to hard code the placeholder. We want to pass that information, as props. So we want to dynamically define both the value and the placeholder of the input. You can see on the left-hand side that we present you different use cases scenarios to make sure that your component is resilient enough to deal with different data models. All right, so I guess that's pretty much the same thing. I'm gonna remove the div straight away. So I'm gonna just type input, type equals text. And then let me move things around. I'm gonna close the input tag before I forget. Now we need a value. We'll see in a minute what we need to put here. And then we got the placeholder. So guys, can you tell me how can I bind, how can I connect the text component with whichever value is offered to the component?
You can pass the props down with curly braces, props.value.
Correct. Props.value. All right, Vicky, so that's interesting. You said props.value. Can you tell me why do we need the curly braces?
Because it's how it's in React. We need curly braces in order to pass the props down.
Yeah, so the thing is, here we got, this is JSX code, yeah, which is some sort of HTML. However, props.value, that's JavaScript code. So our text function receives an argument, which is the props. What type of data props is, guys?
Object.
It's an object, that's correct. It's an object containing all the information that we want to deal with in the component. That's an object, a JavaScript object. And because that's an object, the way we can mix, the way we can combine HTML code or JSX code with JavaScript is by surrounding the JavaScript expressions with curly braces. So finally, we just need to do the same thing with the placeholder. So let's just type props.placeholder. And then I think that should be okay, unless you see any typos or any errors. Do you see any issues, guys?
No.
No. All right. So let's test it. Let's see if it works. And if it works, okay, fantastic. So yeah, we got confetti. Do you have any idea about how to improve it? Do you have any proposal?
Could we destructure props to value?
Nice. Brilliant, Lauren. Indeed. We can destructure the argument. Destructuring is one of the sexiest new coding patterns in JavaScript. So the idea behind destructuring is to prevent from typing props dot all the time. I mean, that's quite simple. It's just an input. But imagine the component becomes more complicated, and we got not just the value in the placeholder, we got, I don't know, more properties like error message, font size, I don't know, whatever. Yeah. At some point, we will need to write props 40 times, and that's exhausting. That's very tiring. So with the structuring, we can inspect the content associated to props with a comma-separated list of keys. So, Lauren, can you tell me what should I type here?
So value and comma placeholder.
That's correct. Value and comma placeholder. And then, guys, do we need to do anything else?
Remove the props.
Remove the props. Correct. Beautiful. And you see that now the code gets simpler. Yeah. So let's test it. See if it works. And then, fantastic. We're confetti time. Not sure if now we want to move everything into one line. I'm not 100% convinced about that. I think the line is short enough this time. That's a bit personal. Yeah, I don't know. That's up to you. But I think the code is readable enough. Thanks to destructuring, we got the first approach in JavaScript history to named arguments. Yeah, and the structuring not only works with objects, also with arrays. But that's a different story. We'll see if today we can take advantage of array destructuring. Cool. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that, guys. Anything else you want to comment, to mention?
Nope.
No? Cool. All right, so let's test it just to make sure we didn't break it. Fantastic. It's still working. So let's jump to question number 3 out of 5. So basketball stars displays Michael Jordan details. That's quite interesting because let's pay attention to the structure of the test. First of all, we are expected to build a component called basketball star. We got it already, fine. And then the component should have an element with something called first name. Can you tell me, guys, what the hell that dot means in front of the word first name?
It's a class.
Notation.
It's a class.
Class,
Yes,
sorry, yeah.
that's a class. Yeah, that's a class. In other words, the component is expecting us to add an element with the class first name and the value Michael. We got the value. We got the content is there. The content is already displayed for us, which is great. So that's pretty simple. We just need to add the classes. So then let's be something in HTML. We will do something like that, right? Class first name, and then class last name. What do you think? Is that valid from the React point of view?
No,
Last
I'm
name.
not for React.
Correct, class name. Yeah, remember, even though that looks like HTML, this is not HTML. This is not HTML. And because it's not HTML, we need to change few things. One of them is in HTML, you can use class to style your DOM, yeah, your HTML. However, in React, we cannot use class because class is a reserved word in JavaScript. We need to use class name instead. So, first of all, will this work or not? Will we get confetti?
Yeah.
I think so. All right, let's test it. But before I test it, before I evaluate it, can you see any styling issue, any warning?
Yes.
On line 6, sorry,
Semicolon.
on line 7, would you need a semicolon?
Ah, that's interesting. That's interesting. All right, let's prove that, guys. First of all, let's test that code snippet without the semicolon. First of all, we get confetti time. That's great. However, let's pay attention to the elegance console. Something you will notice at the end of this exercise, once we present the results, that many players are likely to get penalties on the elegance of the code. And that could be because they probably didn't follow these guidelines. Yeah? So semicolons, historically speaking, were mandatory in JavaScript, but starting from 2015, they are optional. However, still, according to many JavaScript coding style guides, including the popular from Airbnb, they are still, it's a good idea because, when you are writing a letter to a friend, you separate your sentences with a dot. When you want to add a break, you put commas. I mean, you put symbols, right? Are these symbols necessary? Probably not. Probably not. The message will be understood without these punctuation symbols. However, it is recommended to use them because it simplifies the process of understanding what is your code doing. All right, so let's test it. And hopefully that should be all we need. So that's pretty much it. Cool. Question number 4. That's a bit more tricky. That's more complicated. We get more code here. We got loops, but that's good, guys. Let's deal with this challenge. So first of all, can anyone tell me how many props the user component receives?
One.
One. Correct. What's the name of that prop?
User.
That's the user. That's correct. And the user is, what type of data user is?
Object.
That's correct. User, it's an object with some properties. For instance, name and age. But if you scroll down, you notice that, in a different use case scenario, you may receive different props, different details about the user, but that's fine. Because our component should be flexible enough to display whichever details are provided about the given user. If we provide name and age, we will display name colon, whatever the name is, age colon, whatever the age is of the user. If, however, we provide first and last name, pretty much the same thing. So the algorithm is partially created. And let's talk a bit about JavaScript. So let's focus on the first use case scenario. Can anyone tell me what object.keys of an object returns? So if I do object.keys of props.user, what is that gonna return?
It will return an array with name and age.
That's correct. It will return an array with name and age. It will iterate over all the keys of the object, and it will present them within an array. So what we are doing here is we loop over the array of keys, and then for each key, we are gonna transform that string into a piece of HTML. And what's the content associated to that piece of HTML? First of all, we want to display the key, name, age, email address, location, whatever, colon. And then we want to display the value associated to the key. So how can we access each value associated to the corresponding key? Can anyone tell me?
We need to use props.user.
Yep.
And then square braces, square bracket.
Yep. That's correct. That's correct. We need to use this square bracket notation because in this particular case, we want to dynamically check whichever property we are interested in. Yeah. First of all, the name, then the age. So that's the only way to dynamically get values associated to a given key. All right. Will that work or not?
Yeah.
We need to add an space.
Good shout, Elena. Indeed, guys, that's not gonna work. That's not gonna work. Look, if I test it, that should throw an error. Look,
Yeah.
expected name Peter to equal name space Peter. We are really close, so I think the idea is correct, but that's, you know, the complicated bit about testing. It should be precise. So let's test it now and see if it works. Cool. It works this time. We got no elegance warnings. So yeah, I think that's okay. Technically speaking, I believe we could get rid of the parent div, but I think we can leave it like that. I don't think it's that personally. Any questions, any thoughts about this problem?
No.
No? Cool, awesome. Cheers, thank you guys. Question number 5, the last one, right? So 5 out of 5, trap tickets. Let's try to analyze the structure of the problem. So imagine that you are working for a startup that are trying to sell online tickets for, I don't know, a nightclub or something like that. So obviously we need to do some checks with our customers to evaluate whether they are allowed to buy tickets for a particular session with BGs and whatever. So the rules from management are, if the user is at least 18 years old, then fine, the operation can be completed. If the user is below 18 years old, but the session runs in the afternoon, which is alcohol-free and all these things, then the user is still allowed to buy tickets. However, if the user is below 18 years old and tries to get some tickets for the night sessions, we should display a message saying, sorry, you are not allowed to buy tickets for the selected session. So that's what the exercise is asking us to do. Can you tell me how many props the component receives?
One.
One, that's correct, which is the user. Brilliant, that's correct, guys. Yes, the user, yeah? So in the previous exercise, I didn't destructure props. Before I forget, I'm gonna do it right now. So can anyone tell me, how can I destructure props so I don't have to type it anymore?
User in curly braces.
Correct. Yeah, as simple as that. Yeah, we'll talk about further destructuring options in a minute. But for now, you know, I think that makes quite a lot of sense to me. So the exercise is not opinionated about the structure of our HTML. It says nothing about class names, divs, labels, you know, just the message. And that makes everything just simpler because we can write an expression. First of all, let's use an if-else expression. If user.age is greater or equal than 18, then return purchase. Else, return sorry, not allowed. What do you think? Is that expression fully correct?
No, it's missing one condition.
That's correct. What happened if the user is 17 and tries to get some tickets for the afternoon session? Will this platform allow him or her to proceed?
No.
No.
Not at the moment, not at the moment. But according to our business analyst, we should let him or her to buy the tickets. So we can actually, change the expression a bit by working on line number 2. If the user is at least 18, or user.session equal afternoon, then all good. Yeah. If both conditions fail, then we'll tell, sorry, you are not allowed to buy tickets. All right, so we tested, guys. Is there anything wrong? What do you think?
And now it should work.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Maxim. Let's test it and see what we get. Cool, with confetti. No elegance-related issues. However, guys, I think it's a very healthy exercise to rewrite our algorithms from time to time. So can you think about any different way of writing the same piece of code?
Ternary operator.
Ternary operator, brilliant. I like that. So how can we do that, Maxim?
So you open if, then parentheses.
Sorry, say it again.
You open if and then parentheses.
No, I don't want to type if. I mean, if I'm using a ternary operator.
Right.
Can anyone help him, guys? What's the expression we should type here?
User.age.
User.age is, well, we need to actually copy and paste the same expression, right? Or user.session is equal. Should we use, actually, guys, let me ask you something. Let me do a break here. Should we use double equals or triple equals?
Always
Triple equals.
Always triple equals. Why?
Because 2 equals are evil.
Nice.
I don't remember the name of the person.
That's a brilliant answer. Yes. So first of all, double equals will make the trick. It will work fine with double equals. However, triple equals are stricter. If you want to be precise, double equals check the equality of the expression. Meanwhile, triple equals checks the identity of the expression. So triple equals is stricter. And even though in this sort of simplistic use case scenario, that probably won't make any difference, in reality, in the long term, it is strongly recommended to use triple equals to avoid weird, exotic use case scenarios that go beyond the scope of the session. You probably know the very famous book called JavaScript: The Good Part. This is arguably the most famous book in JavaScript history, written by Douglas Crackford. So according to Mr. Crackford, double equals is the evil twin of triple equals. So long story short, he doesn't really care whether you understand the difference or not. The message is, guys, don't use double equals. Yeah. There are so many jokes about JavaScript on the internet. So have you seen that joke about JavaScript versus the good parts? So you'll see, so on the right hand side you can see the book that Mr. Crackford wrote many years ago, and on the left hand side you can see another book. Yeah. So that's a joke about how weird sometimes JavaScript is. Yeah? Don't take that literally. JavaScript is great. Cool. So that's the ternary operator, technical expression we are going to write. And then what else? So what else should we type here? Can you please help me to complete this expression?
Space question mark.
Question mark. All right. Let's move to a new line. And then what?
Purchase.
Purchase. Yeah. What else?
Space colon.
Space colon, and then the other case, right? Sorry, not mod, sorry, not allowed. Yep, something like that. And then, of course, that's pretty much it. So which coding style do you prefer? The one the ternary operator style or the classic if-else? Why?
The first one, because it's more
Ternary
clean and more, it's not messy. You can
Yeah.
keep track of what you're writing.
Cool. That's a good point, Mickey. Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree with you. In this particular case, I would personally use the ternary because the expression is simple enough. However, be careful, because the ternary operator doesn't scale well. If your instruction logic is complex enough, you know, if, else, eventually, even though ternary will work, it will play against readability. Yeah, that's one of the disadvantages of the ternary operator. And also don't forget that the ternary operator is less flexible than if-else, because with if-else, I can do whatever you want, right? I can create a variable. I can do whatever I want, right? I can type some code and then eventually can return something. With ternary, I cannot do that. I don't have that flexibility. So that's why one is not going to replace the other. Depending on the use case and scenario, you will likely use one or the other. All right, so let's test it, see if it works. Oh, it doesn't work because I did a typo. You see, purchase with exclamation mark. Yeah, I missed that one. I didn't do that on purpose. Sorry about that. So if
There's
I fix
another
that
typo
problem.
as well, isn't there?
There's another typo.
Afternoon.
Oh, yeah,
Line
the same
two.
thing, right? Sorry, not allow.
Afternoon.
Afternoon. Yes. I did that on purpose to see if you were paying attention. No, I'm joking. I missed that one. Cool. All right. Afternoon. Brilliant. Finally, we got confetti time. Yeah. Guys, do you see? Can we improve the solution? Is there any way to, improve it, or are you happy with that?
I suppose you could destructure user even further down to age and session.
That's very interesting. Lauren. So Lauren is suggesting that we can destructure. We can run a nested structuring operation. Yeah. So that's correct. We managed to destructure props, so we don't have to type props all the time, which is great. However, that's not absolutely ideal, because in reality, what we want to do is to why do we need to type user dot? That's still exhausting. So we can continue destructuring our object by typing colon, and then again a comma separated list of properties we want to destructure, which will be the age and the session. So now we don't have to type user at all, and our expression becomes even simpler. Let's see if it works. Fantastic. We got confetti time, no warnings or anything like that. So that's absolutely great. Anything else, guys?
No.
All right. So I think that's pretty much it regarding beginner. So I think we got some time to play intermediate. You can see some players are already submitting their exercises. I would like to present the results later on. We still got some minutes. I think the challenges will be officially over at 7:15. So probably you can see how many developers are participating, which is great. So let's pay attention to upper intermediate, where things are getting a bit more complicated. We got 30 minutes. Then after these 30 minutes, we will present the results. Do you have any favorite team, guys? Do you have any favorite movie out of this list? Any suggestion?
Yeah, right. It's very close, but I'd have to go with Mega Shark vs. Crocosaurus. I've got to be honest.
I agree with you. I think this is just a masterpiece. Yeah. All right, guys, so let's go with Mega Shark versus Crocosaurus. Yeah. All right. So what we got here? This is intermediate, right? So probably we'll need to think a bit more than before. Question number 1. It's interesting because in question number 1, we start talking about serious user interaction. So what we got here is, as you can see, we got a component called switch feature. Let's try to understand the problem first, and then we'll look after the implementation details. Yeah. So interestingly enough, the component should be stateless. In other words, we are not allowed to use a class. We need to use hooks. Yeah? which is probably the best approach. But even if we thought to use a class, we are not allowed here, right? And then, what about the structure of our HTML? So we need a label. So I'm sure we'll display some text. And we need a button. So I guess we'll click on the button to run some operations. So then what else? What else? The label, by default, is going to present a message to the user called feature disabled. So when we click on the button, then we are going to change the message to feature enabled. And when we click again, we'll present feature disabled. So this is just a switch, you know, when you switch your lights on and off, if the lights are on, you switch them, you switch the button, they can get off, yeah, and vice versa, on and off, on and off. There is nothing in between, yeah. This is like being pregnant, guys. Either you are pregnant or you are not pregnant. You cannot be half pregnant. So, all right, so let's build that switch mechanism. So with hooks, first of all, I'm going to create a variable called isEnabled, set is enabled. Yep. And then I'm going to use a state to initialize the isEnabled variable. You can see that by default, guys, should the feature be presented as enabled or as disabled by default?
As disabled?
As disabled, that's correct, because that's, you know, that's the first assertion we got here on the left-hand side, yeah? So by default, whatever that cool feature is going to be disabled. And now, let's think about the HTML bit. On the HTML side, we are, for now, I'm going to present a div. We'll see later on if we can optimize the structure a bit. But for now, guys, let's start simple, yeah? So what I know so far is I got a label, and I got a button, and then let me close the button. All right, and now, is there any text on the button? Probably not, right? So switch feature, for instance, whatever. Yeah, I think that this is not opinionated about the content we offer to the user. It's about the action that gets triggered once the user clicks on the button. So now, on the label, we can, I mean, there are many different ways we can solve the problem. So for instance, let me think about one of them. We could have a ternary, as we've done before. So we could say, if feature is enabled, then we could display something like feature enabled. Then otherwise we could display feature disabled. Yeah, that's probably not my favorite approach, but that's definitely an option for now. Cool. And now, obviously, that's not going to work. If I test it, it will work probably until when? Until that line. Yeah, I believe if my theory, if my crazy theory is right, it will start having issues on that line. So let's see if that's right or not. So yeah, it's not working. And actually, my theory was right. You see, the platform is highlighting the line where we start having issues. Why we have issues here? Because, you know, the testing engine is clicking on the button, but nothing happens. And nothing happens because we are not triggering any action when we click on the button. So let's try to sort this out. So, you know, in JavaScript, you can have an on-click handler, and in here you can set up an action. Is that valid in React, guys, in JSX?
You have a capital C because...
That's correct, Vicky. Remember, JavaScript is case sensitive, and React needs you to write on click with capital C. I'll tell you something. Even if you fail, even if you don't know that, and because you come from a vanilla JavaScript world or from different framework library, whatever, you type on click. I think React is really good spotting these sort of silly mistakes. So React will show you a warning telling you, hey, you can use on click. Are you sure you don't want to say on click with capital C? And you will say, yeah, why not, whatever. Yeah. So that's the on-click event. So this is going to be a function. So now, can anyone tell me what else should I type to complete the problem? So which method should I invoke here?
Set
is enable, which is a method. And then what's the value?
Exclamation
not,
mark.
Yeah. What? So for instance, Correct. Is enabled. Yeah, that should be correct. What can I, guys? What happens if I change it to not to true? Will that work? Imagine that I'm the electrician of your new shiny apartment that you recently got, right? And I'm dealing with the electricity system of your apartment. And then, can you tell me, if I were the electrician of your apartment, what sort of lighting infrastructure I'm setting up in your house?
It would just always be light, wouldn't it? So
Exactly. Exactly. The message I will tell you is, A, look, I'm done dealing with your infrastructure, with your lighting and everything. There is just a subtle issue. You can switch the lights on. However, once the lights are on, you cannot switch them off. And you obviously will say, what the hell? Who are you, right? Where did you get your license to run this sort of operation? Yeah, I'm sure, you know, British Gas is not going to be happy about that. So yeah, that's not correct, because I mean, if I test that, you'll see it will work on the first use case scenario, but eventually, once we try to roll back, once we try to switch the feature off, that's not gonna work. So obviously, as you have proposed, we need to negate with the exclamation mark is enabled. What that means, if it's enabled was false, because we negate it, it will become true. If it's enabled is true, it will become false, and vice versa. Yeah? So that's the way it works. Also, let's pay attention, guys. We got some warnings, some indentation warnings. We can easily mess around indentation in JavaScript, especially because indentation is just a styling issue. If you don't have any sort of background with other programming language like Python, in Python, having a perfect indentation is a must. If you fail indenting your code, Python snippets won't work at all. However, JavaScript is more flexible. And in this particular case, it will just throw a warning. So I believe if I run it, if I test it, it should work. Here you go, you got confetti time. But we got some warnings that we shouldn't ignore. And these warnings are because as we are writing some code inside of the label, we should definitely indent it. Yeah, as you can see here. All right, so that's pretty much the way it works. I have an idea, guys. Even though that's okay, I don't have big problems with that algorithm. Let me present you the problem. What happens if tomorrow business analysts they want to change from feature enable, feature disable to, I don't know, spec enable, spec disable, or lights enable, lights disable? How many strings, how many expressions do we need to update in the code? Sorry, say it again. Oh, what the hell? A bit closer. Oh, really? Well, all right. It's all good now. All right, cool. Sorry about that. Let me know if it happens again. Cool. Cheers. Thank you very much, Alex. All right, so guys, how many times we need to look after the word feature in the code? Twice. That's correct.
Every time.
It's not a big deal, right? We could change that twice, but that's not optimum. So coding is about writing something, the less the better. Yeah. So let's change that a bit. Look at what I'm doing now. So I'm gonna type feature outside because that's sort of hard coded. Yeah. And now look, I can simplify the expression into something like that. You see? So now if business want to change the word feature with spec, light, whatever, yeah, you see, now we need to change the word just once. It's a very subtle improvement, but that should help to make our code a bit nicer. Yeah. If you check the results of the challenge afterwards, you'll find out, senior React developers like Giacomo, they like to play with these tricks and try to optimize the code a lot, which is very cool, right? Because you can find out how much you can optimize your components. Any questions?
No. All good, yeah.
No.
What do you think about the surrounding div? not a big fan of that. Yeah.
You can remove them.
You can remove them means do you want me, Max, him to get rid of it completely like that?
No, just leave them as a segment.
That's correct. That's correct. You can use a fragment like that. Yep.
Fragments over them.
So that's not going to make a big difference. I mean, that should work. And so can anyone tell me what's the difference between typing div and using a fragment, an empty tag?
Is it more performant to use an empty tag?
That's correct, Lauren. That's correct. If I type a div, my web browser, my Google Chrome, whatever, it will render a div. However, if I use a fragment, which is an empty tag, be careful, guys, because fragments are not valid in HTML. That's something that React made up. Yeah? If I use a fragment, the root element of the component will be both label and button. So we are saving one HTML element. And you may be thinking, is that relevant? Well, I mean, if you are building your portfolio, that's not going to make a big impact on the performance. However, I mean, I've been working on apps, on multi-million apps that had massive performance issues, not because of the JavaScript algorithm, not because of the CSS, but because of the number of DOM elements they had to maintain. Thousands and thousands and thousands of DOM elements, particularly div tags. Yeah. So let's talk about, tag economy. Yeah. So from a tag economy perspective, if a div is not necessary, then let's get rid of it. Can you tell me any drawback of using the fragment?
If we want to apply a style, we should use a div.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Elena. She's right. Imagine that I want to apply a style, a border surrounding my component. Yeah? If there is no div, if there is nothing here, I cannot do that. Yeah, I could obviously, run some CSS hacks, but if I definitely wanted to add some classes, I will do something like that. Class name, switch feature, for instance, and then in my CSS somewhere else, I will do something like that, right? Switch feature, border, 1 pixel, solid red. Yeah, as an example. Yeah. So obviously, having a div, having a proper element simplifies that. So the thing is, fragments are very useful, but as usual, it depends on what you want to build. Anything else?
No.
No? All right, we got 17 minutes left. So let's run question number 2, I believe. Oh, that's a really good question. I like this question. So this question is JavaScript driven. Many junior developers keep asking, but why do we need to be good at JavaScript to work with React? Well, don't ask that question in a job interview, of course, right? Don't forget that at the end of the day, React works on top of JavaScript. So without having some good fundamentals about JavaScript works, it is very difficult to build proper React application. And that's a good example. That's a good example. The complexity in this exercise is not about building HTML. It's not about building user interaction with buttons, presenting nice messages. No. So this is about dealing with JavaScript structures. So first of all, can you tell me how many props the list, sorry, oops, I spoiled the answer, sorry. How many props the female players component receives? One, which is the list. So let's try first of all to understand the logic behind. So the female players component receives a list of players. What type of data that list of players is, guys?
An array.
That's an array. An array of?
Objects.
That's correct. We receive an array of objects. So we're going to iterate over the array of objects. And then, because my resolution is so small, the code looks a bit funny. But anyway, I'll try to explain that. So the idea is we got a list of players and we want to present just the female ones sorted alphabetically. Yeah? So there are 2 parts, 2 steps. We need to filter and we need to sort. Yeah? That's pretty much the idea. The exercise is inviting us to use a class, a stateful component. I'm not a big fan of classes. Yeah? Senior developers, they don't like them much unless you have a really good reason to use them. But in this particular case, do we need to use any state? I don't think so. I don't think so. We just need to display a bunch of tags, a bunch of HTML tags. So hopefully I won't regret about that, but I'm going to remove everything. I'm going to type function, female players, and then I'm going to structure the argument straight away. So I'm going to call it, shall I call it players? Will that work?
Yeah.
Are you sure? And Brexit?
List.
Yes, that's correct, Lauren. Should be list. Why list? Because that's the name of the props, the property we are passing down, further down to the component. All right, so now, return list. I want to, keep only the female players. Which method in JavaScript is very useful to obtain a subset of the original array? Can you tell me, guys?
Filter.
Filter, that's correct. That's correct. So filter, so I got a player, and then for each player, I want to get the female ones. So I can do player dot gender equal, something like that. Will that work?
With capital F.
Capital F, correct, Vicky. So JavaScript is case sensitive. So careful with these things. Can I, guys, I'll tell you something. Can I destructure the player argument?
Yeah.
You tell me.
Yeah.
Organized it.
We could say curly braces, name, comma.
Curly braces, name. Do we really need the name?
We just need the gender, sorry.
Correct. We don't really need to provide all the properties. I mean, if we don't care about the name, we just care about the gender, let's just ignore the name. And what else? Is that expression correct?
No, we need to remove player.
We need to remove player. Good point. Anything else?
Do we need to wrap it in parentheses because it's an argument to?
That's correct. Because we are destructuring the argument, we have to surround it with parentheses. You probably notice that if I don't do that, the code editor is changing the syntax highlight. So you can visually identify that gender and list, they look different, right? So this is some sort of alert, like, hey, what's going on? Why, if they're supposed to be similar variables, why they got different colors? Yeah? All right, so that's the first bit. And now that's the complicated bit. We need to sort. So to sort, the way sort works is we need to pass a compare function. So with two players, player A and player B. So because I want to sort the players alphabetically, that's, kind of tricky. Because if I were playing with numbers, that will be a piece of cake. But with how do you sort strings? Well, let me show you something. In JavaScript, you can compare strings using the greater and the lower than operators. So I can do player one dot name is less than player b dot name. Then, and that's the tricky part. This is where many developers get confused. So sort is expected a number. If the number is negative, -1, -2, -1 million, doesn't really matter. If the number is negative, it will respect the order. So it will essentially sort the array in an ascending order. So it will put the smaller player name on top, which is correct, you see. Hingis starting with H, Celes starting with S. And then it will put the greater value on the right-hand side. So here you can do something like -1. Else, and so let me zoom the screen out a bit just for this exercise, because otherwise I will run out of space. So now, actually, let me do something. Let's move things around. That's why we got indentation, right? We need to be really careful with the parentheses. We can do something like that. Yeah. So based on that, hopefully, my array of players will be sorted alphabetically. Yeah. Then that's pretty much it. So what do you think, guys? Will that work or not? Only dealing with. So we need to transform the array of players into an array of paragraphs. Which method in JavaScript is very useful to transform something into something else, guys?
.map.
Brilliant, Vicky. Correct. .map. So now identify in a unique way every single element of the array. Which key can we use?
Layer.name.
Correct. Even though that probably won't be very strict in in more sophisticated use case scenarios, because obviously we may have multiple players with the same name. Yeah? Imagine the Williams sisters, yes, Serena Williams and Venus Williams. They have the same last name, which is what the system is tracking. So that won't work eventually, and then we need to deal with something else, like trying to find an ID, or in worst case scenarios an index. But hey, let's keep it simple, and I think that should be it. All right, so will that work?
Yeah, I'd say so.
All right. Test it. Fingers crossed. Nice. Yeah, obviously there is a silly mistake, miss a semicolon, but it's all good apart from that. I got some questions for you. Can I destructure the map thingy?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing, right? Parentheses, name, and then I can get rid of the player. So my code gets slightly simpler. Yeah, as usual, let's test it again to make sure it still works. Correct. And now, can I destructure these arguments and the sort and the compare function of sort?
No.
The thing is, technically speaking, I can do that if I wanted. Technically speaking, that's correct. However, can anyone see what the problem is?
It's not very clear. It can be confused with the same variable name.
So it's not really clear, not just for humans, but for the machine. I mean, that's not correct at all. What the hell do you want me to do here? Name is more than name? That doesn't make sense. Yeah. So we should be careful to, getting overexcited about using destructuring. It works well in the majority of the occasions, but not always. We could rename these variables. We could do, there are definitely ways to do that. Yeah, but we need to be careful. That's my message. All right, so obviously that should still work. And now I got the final question for you. Should we filter and then sort, or should we sort and then filter? And why?
Filter and then sort, because
Why?
if you were to do sort before filter, then you're kind of creating more work for the JavaScript. So essentially, if you filtered, you've got a shorter amount of elements of your array. So it's more performant.
That's brilliant. Perfect. That's brilliant, Lauren. That's correct. So imagine we got a list of 1 million tennis players, if that makes any sense. All the players in tennis history. Yeah? And we just want to display players that were born in, I don't know, in Palestine. Yeah, it's just a random example. Obviously, we're not going to find many. So thanks to filter, we can first of all, get rid of the information we don't care about. And then that will speed up the sorting process. If we sort first, we are going to sort 1 million players, which could be exhausting for the machine. Yeah? However, if we filter and then sort, we are simplifying the complexity of some of the operations involved here. Yeah? Cool. Anything else?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Go for it.
Feel free to shoot me down in flames. It may not work, but with sort in that instance, because we are going in alphabetical order from in ascending order, could it actually work if we just pass sort with no argument at all?
That's very romantic. Yeah, that's not gonna work, I'm afraid. Let's test it. That's gonna work because it is true that sort without any arguments, without the compare function, can deal with some sort of basic in capital letters use cases scenarios, like basic numbers 1 to 9, things like that. As soon as your elements require a further understanding, that's not going to work. Don't forget, Max, that here we're talking about an array of objects, So it's really complicated to sort them in an automatic fashion, because how JavaScript knows what do you want to sort? Do you want to sort by name, by genre? You know, what happens if you got 8s?
Okay, yeah.
You know, what's the criteria? That's why you need to be a bit more explicit in that particular respect. Cool. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Monica Seles, you remember her, guys? Do you remember she suffered a stabbing attack in 1993 in the middle of a game? All right, so all right, you can go to YouTube afterwards and find the scatological details. All right, so 3 minutes left. I think, guys, the challenge was supposed to finish at 7:15, so I'm probably gonna run out of time. Actually, let me try to do that very quickly. So I want to create a list of countries, and I want to display a search box to filter them. So, for instance, if I got Jamaica, Japan, and Jordan, if I type JOR, I want to display just Jordan. If I type JA, I want to display Jamaica and Japan. Yeah, I want to filter a list of countries. So let me do that very, very quickly, because I'm going to present the results in a minute. So function countries, I don't need any state probably. Well, I don't actually need a state, but I'm going to use hooks. So I'm going to create a variable called search and set search equals use state. I mean, by default, I'm going to display just an empty input, and then eventually I'm going to return what? Well, for instance, a div. Actually, let me display a fragment. So, you know, I'm running quite fast here because I don't want to delay anything. And then what we got here? We got an input. We'll see what to do with the input in a minute. And then the idea is to filter the countries based on what the user has typed. So here we receive the list of countries, so we can destructure the list. And then we can type the algorithm that should be something like list.filter. So for each country, I want to display it if the country includes the search. So I can type country.includes search. You see, I'm quite happy about the syntax. I think it's quite readable. Search, if I type it correctly. Yeah, something like that. So I want to just display the countries that include the type search. And eventually, because I want to display a list of paragraphs, as you can see here on the left-hand side, I can do, for each country, you know, just display a paragraph with the details, right? So I just want the country, and then I need a key. Remember, guys, the key and the root element, key equals country. I think that's pretty much it, honestly. So country. And then obviously I need to look after what happened when the user changed on the input, right? When the user types something. On change equals, you know, in JavaScript, we receive the event. And the event contains the information about what the user has typed. So now I can here do set search with e.target.value. That's the convention in JavaScript. So e.target.value will hold all the relevant information about what the user has typed. Can you see any typos, guys? Yes, I can see a typo. So missing parentheses here, missing parentheses there. Can you see anything else I miss? No. I'll take that as a no. So let's test it. Nice. You see, so it works. So to me, that's a very simplistic way of dealing with the problem. You see, input, a list of elements. So you filter the elements. So you just render the elements that are contained within whatever the user has typed, and then you display them in different paragraphs. And eventually, when the user types something, we will update the search. Because we're using hooks, React will re-render and will update the list of selected countries. And that's pretty much it. So, anything else?
No.
No? All right, cool. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for your collaboration. And now it's time, before I spoil the results, it's time to present the challenges. Okay, so let's start. Actually got everything prepared here. Let's start with lower beginner. So what we got in lower beginner. So guys, what you can see here, that's the player's performance pentagraph. This is what we use at Kodiri to evaluate how good your performance was on each particular challenge. What are we measuring here? First of all, tenacity, that means how many questions you completed, accuracy, how many times you fail before getting the right answer. You remember, guys, Street Fighter in the 90s, where you play the first time, just randomly hit the buttons without any criteria. So, that's a Street Fighter mode. Speed, how long it took you to complete the challenge. Focus, how many times you went to Google or to Stack Overflow to get some help. And last but not least, elegance. You remember, guys, the elegance console? How many warnings you got according to the Airbnb styling standards? All right, so we are gonna present the results by teams. So once again, this is the lower beginner. So 3 teams, no one on Mega Python versus Gatoroid. So what's the median score on the Team Alpha? I said before we were using the average score of each team. It's just the median. If anyone wants to know why, we can discuss that later. All right, so median score of MegaShark team is 93 points. Let me zoom my screen out a bit. It's not that important now, the text. So let's just get an idea about the scores. You can see the best players on each team. What about Sartopius team? 2 players, including Bavik, one of the classic players of the platform. Oh, 89. That wasn't enough today for them. So finally, Piranaconda versus Elephant with a picture of Donald Trump behind. It was 99 points. Brilliant. So we got 1 point for the team Piranaconda. All right, so that's on the lower beginner. By the way, guys, I didn't mention that, but you can check the code that everyone has written. So if you wanna, compare your code against other, compare your code against other, you can click on this check in detail analysis, and then you can see everyone's code side by side. If the answer is wrong, the code will be highlighted in red color. So you can check all these things. And also, if you want to find the team results, you can find some additional metrics about how each team performed, in case you like this sort of things. Cool. So challenge 2 out of 6. So that's the mid-beginner. So what we got here, let me refresh the page in case someone submitted the challenge in the last minute. You can see, obviously, the more difficult the challenge is, the smaller the pentagons are. So what we got today here. So again, 3 teams, MegaShark. Not quite a lot of people here. Looks like you kind of like this movie. So what's their average score? It's 90 points. Not too bad, guys. Not too bad. It's a really good score. No one playing the Mega Python team. Bavik got 99 points, which is awesome. And last but not least, on the Piranaconda team, they got 96. Brilliant. So you got 1 point for Piranaconda, 1 team for Sartopius. Challenge 3 out of 6. Upper beginner. You'll see some particularities in this challenge. That's the one we review first. Look at the elegance. Guys, you remember I told you before that you'll find out that many developers not many, but some developers just tend to ignore the elegance warning, maybe because they are running out of time, or who knows. Okay, so results by team. MegaShark, Sartopius, and Piranaconda. Again, so 87 points for MegaShark. They are very consistent with their scores, very solid. 88 points. So 1 more for Sartopius. So now, is it 2-1 for Piranaconda team or 2-1 for Sartopius? Let's have a look. Look at that. Mr. Adam, 99 points for him. So we got 2-1 for Piranaconda team. And now, intermediate level, the last 3 challenges. It's looking good on the lower beginner level. So let's present the results by team. I'm expecting less players here. You can see that's still 3 teams, so that's going to be interesting. Remember, 2-1 for Piranaconda and Sartopius. No points for MegaShark team, but things may change quickly. So, for instance, look at that, 90 points. So that's very solid on intermediate. What about the Sartopius team? Oh, look how close that was, right, guys? Too hot to handle. 90.5 versus 90.2. So will it be the first victory for MegaShark, or will Adam get the 3rd one for the Piranaconda team? Look at that. That was ruthless. Yeah, new victory for the Piranaconda team, 3-1. What else? Mid-intermediate. Oh, that looks quite cool, guys. That looks really good. Really strong results today. Yeah, many strong participants. Oh, look, we got Giacomo, right? We got Giacomo versus Babik. I don't know how many times we've seen this battle, yeah, within the last few months. So the new edition, there is a new edition here. All right, so Minji got, oh, look at that, 94 points on the mid-beginner challenge for Minji. No one on Mega Python, but what about Sarctopius, Babik? Look at that, 97. So will Babik be able to defeat two of the strongest players in the platform, Giacomo and Adam? Let's figure out. Look at that, 89. Brilliant, Babik. Outstanding performance, mate. That was absolutely brilliant. So we got 2-4. That means that obviously the Piranaconda team got the eventual victory. However, let's have a look to the last challenge. Cool, new players here. That's great. A new edition of Babik versus Giacomo and Adam. So we'll find out. So new player, guys, on the upper intermediate, Ivan. So what's his score? It's 27 points. You can see how difficult things are on the upper intermediate level. What about Sarctopius team? Oh, look at that, 87. Look, Babik wasn't even the top player on the team, right? So that was an amazing performance by Ian. So now, Giacomo, Adam, Kamal, and Christian, above or below 87? Let's find out. Oh, not enough for them. So it's a 4-3. That was a beautiful battle, guys. That was a very nice challenge. I hope you enjoyed. Yeah, you know, the platform is free once again, and you are more than welcome to participate, to play, and of course to collaborate with us. Why not? Apart from that, thank you very much for your time. Alex, not sure if you want to share some final words. Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, that was great. Hope you guys all enjoyed it. Thank you very much to Ricardo, all of the Kodiri guys. Thanks to Alex and all of the Pusher guys for hosting us as always and doing such an amazing job and being so versatile last minute. I hope you guys all really enjoyed it. If you do have any other questions or anything like that, you can hit me up on LinkedIn or wherever you might like. And yeah, I'm sure that the Kodiri guys will be happy to have a chat with you as well. If you're interested about using their platform, feel free to get onto Ricardo and any of those guys as well. So hope you guys all really enjoyed it. I hope you're all managing to stay safe and well. And yeah, we'll see you for the next one. So thanks, guys. Have a good one.